welcome back everyone. We're on to policy review municipal and, oh no, sorry, the Chief Executive has to go, so with the leave of the committee, yeah, he's just making it up. Where are we?
18, page 181.
Page 181, Strategic Plan Implementation Report. We're going to take that now, if that's okay with everyone.
I'll take the report as read.
It's been moved by Councillor Tooman. Are there any questions?
Someone's bringing a question in. Phone a friend.
Phone a friend. Okay. No questions? I'll wait for everyone to catch up. No? Doesn't look like it.
I'm not subject to
So it's safe to move? I'll move. Oh, Councillor Tooman, you have. You got I'll second it. Councillor Tooman's going to move it. Seconded by myself. Is there any debate?
Because it's all of the plans of all of the things across council, so rather than have 5 different people present it, I just decided to present it. But unfortunately, most of the people responsible for supporting me have gone home already, so it's just me. so please don't ask any questions.
Done. Excellent governance. Okay, so look, that's been moved and seconded. There's no debate. All those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Excellent. Speaking, CE. All right, now we'll go back up to item 13, page 119. Oh, sorry, Oh yes, sorry, Municipal and Domain Endowment Fund, page 119. And we've got Calvin.
Hello, councillors.
And I believe you have a change to the report?
Yes, so councillors, just there is a omission in the recommendations which we have provided to Mary, which she can put up. But rather than the report just being received, the recommendations from the B&I subcommittee, we are going to put it up on the screen. You can see them up there. So we do apologise that was the omission from that. But that is the recommendation we're putting forward from a staff amendment to the report.
I'll move.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I'll second.
Unless there's any questions, just very briefly, this is an update report which, hello Nicholas, which brings forward the municipal endowment funds in the process to move it forward to the HBL, or Hamilton Properties Limited. It's a very brief update report. It does outline our engagement plans which are underway and commenced this week to do engagement, and clearly it also talks about a need for a business case just to prove up the numbers that it can be done and can be achieved. And as we've said there in the recommendation, that they will go forward to the full council meeting of the 29th of September. If there's any questions, happy to take them.
Just a question on the recommendation. It was a recommendation from the B&I subcommittee to recommend this to strategy and policy.
Yes.
So then, why does that then say the recommendations from B&I are referred to the council?
Yes, that should be from, what, I can't remember actually why that is.
Shouldn't it now say the recommendations from strategy and policy?
Yes, yes it should.
No, it shouldn't. Oh. No, it's sort of, I am going to intervene here.
Oh.
So basically the B&I recommendation effectively required us to get a number of pieces of work done which we didn't get done in time for this committee, and that includes the business case and the consultation. So ultimately this was always going to go up to council for sign-off, and C effectively acknowledges that the business case and the results of public engagement will be reported back at the 29th, which will then enable council to adopt the recommendation that the B&I subcommittee have already adopted. So it's a little bit of a sneaky.
No, you're passing it on.
To pass it on to council
passing on with no comment.
Passing it on, just, yeah. And I've added C in just to acknowledge the reason that I am passing it on, because we can't adopt the B&I committee's recommendation at this point in time until that consultation and the business case is completed.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right, I understand.
And this report outlines what that is in
Yeah.
terms of consultation and engagement
Okay,
process.
yeah, thanks. Councillor Mallett?
Just to be clear, Richard, could you just point out what are the conditions that have to be met before it can be accepted? So the business case by I beg your pardon, Pricewaterhouse?
Yep, so
That's one.
the two main ones is the business case.
Yep.
And also we're undertaking, we had a specific level of engagement to be undertaken, which was contact key stakeholders as part of the BNI recommendation. I've decided to broaden that out a little bit further, so we're doing a little bit more public engagement. So we need to complete that public engagement as well. So public engagement and the business case.
Okay, why aren't those conditioned? I mean, that's a subject to, isn't it? Subject to the business case being finished and the consultation being completed.
Yep. Like this committee's not making it's not adopting it, it's not endorsing it, it's just referring it on. So it's just basically there's...
And you don't think those conditions need to be in there?
Well, no, because ultimately the recommendation from the BNI committee that's getting referred on picks those up.
Okay, I guess you have got it in C anyway, haven't you?
Yes,
Have you?
yeah, correct.
Is it in the information of the endowment fund? No, but the business case is the PricewaterhouseCoopers business case, is that right?
That's correct.
So they are actually in there.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor King?
So this is a big decision, diverting a huge amount of money away from this chamber into out of our control. Is it appropriate to make this decision a week before the election by this group of people?
Yes. No. Just ultimately, you can put forward a motion.
So 8 days then.
Yeah. So all this is doing is pushing it forward to that meeting. At that decision, at that meeting, if you believe that you don't want this council to make that decision, you can pass a motion to not progress and take it to the new council. But we have a recommendation from the BNI committee to take it through to this committee, and I'm just honouring that recommendation to take it through to council. If you so wish, you can pass a motion at the council meeting on the 29th to defer it until a new council. That's your discretion, councillor. The business case is the main reason.
Yeah, I understand what's coming here.
Yeah, so the business case is to provide that level of understanding to this council, as well as combined with the consultation about the quality of that decision to be made.
So from a process point of view, is it proper process to put this up 8 days before, or a few days before an election, and where most of the members, or a lot of the members who are going to be voting, won't have to live with that policy?
Yep. So firstly,
And I'm just asking not from an ethical point of view. I think that's wrong, obviously, or I wouldn't be asking the question. But from a process point of view, where do we stand on big decisions like this of diverting huge amounts of money?
Yep. So if this was just a dry run without it having gone through the various subcommittees, I'd agree with you. But this has gone through the various subcommittees and has been debated at that level.
Well, with a few of us, only a few of us at the subcommittee level.
I acknowledge that, and the other aspect is that up until
and it was never debated, because whenever I put up a motion, it never got seconded, so there was no debate.
that aside, councillor, I mean, ultimately, if we couldn't put any items up at the last council meeting, we'd never have a last council meeting. Ultimately, we all you're councillors until such time as the end of the term. I've done my best, and you would have noticed, or maybe you didn't notice, to move as many items out of that last council meeting as possible, and hence the fact this agenda is quite large. The Finance Committee agenda on the 20th of September is quite large, to avoid that scenario. But we had a work program, we undertook that work program, and unfortunately some of the work required to deliver that work program was quite extensive, and it's ended up what it's ended up to do. I mean, ultimately, like I said, if council wishes to defer that, then a motion can be put forward at that 29th meeting to defer it. But you will have all the information at that point in time to make a call if you believe that there is enough information needed for you to make a call to achieve the ethical as well as legal outcomes. You can do so. If you don't believe there is enough information there, I encourage you to put forward a recommendation.
So equally, could same paper be put up at the first of the new council meeting to be rediscussed?
Yeah, at this point in time, I've got a recommendation to bring it back
You have?
for this term by from the BNI committee. But like I said, if a recommendation came up or a motion was put forward at that 29th meeting, I can take it through, and you're more than welcome to do that.
So,
We will, as staff, be ready for that discussion on the 29th. But
so at the first of the new council meetings, will the opportunity be there to re-raise this issue and start from where we left off, or do we have to start all over again?
no, like I said, there will be a full comprehensive report available on the 29th of September. You can pass a motion to carry that forward to the next council meeting, which will be in the new term. You're right as a councillor.
On the 29th, if it gets voted through, does the process allow it to be re-raised immediately at the first of the next council meetings?
Yep.
Anything.
There's rules about how you do that, but you can do that.
Thank you.
Any decision of council with the right number of votes can be revisited
Anytime.
at any time. So anything we've done, Councillor King.
Yeah, but by visiting it immediately, all your consultation's been done, everything's in place, and it's still in a timely, it's still within a time frame that's acceptable.
Absolutely. Ultimately, we'll have information available at that point in time. If you don't believe that the 29th is the right time to make the decision, put that motion forward.
The work will have been done, and
We would have all the work available on the 29th.
Yep.
And in fact, the majority of the work's done now, apart from the outstanding
those
2 points.
Do you understand my question, that if it does get put on 29th, and if it does go through, and we end up heading towards this independently controlled business controlling a huge amount of our funds,
Yep.
could we bring it back again in the first meeting of the new council?
Yep, but there are rules you've got to follow in terms of how you do that, but yes, you can. Yep. Bear in mind that the timeline for execution of this transaction isn't until March next year, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's a lead time in it as well. So any time up until that point in March, what we're doing before then is starting the process for, building a strategy, looking for directors and so forth. We don't actually make the official resolution of this council to activate, which is the next step. So the resolution that'll come back in September will not activate the entity. All it does is set up a course of actions to lead up to the activation.
Yep.
So you have an opportunity to reverse that and stop it whenever you like, subject to whatever the standing orders are in terms of proximity of this decision. But then right up until March, when we bring back a report to activate it, you could vote that down at that point as well. We could go through the whole process and council may not be satisfied with the steps taken. So regardless of whether you bring a report back or not, there's a safeguard in place to halt the formation or activation that's already formed, the activation of the CCO.
And those steps are outlined in page 120.
Thank you.
Councillor Gallagher?
No, I think you've covered it. It's clear this is a device by which we pass on the recommendations to full council. And then obviously Councillor King has flagged, I think, that he'll be raising some issues of, is it appropriate to pass a particular resolution on the 29th, given that the councils have to be mindful at this stage of the term, there's a degree of caretaker. But then you've also, and you're prepared for questions which clearly say that, from what I'm hearing, the council could in principle support this, but if a new council was minded to unpick it, they could do so quite easily. Is that correct, Mr Chief Executive?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, at any particular point in time, council could pass a resolution to unwind any decisions of council.
Yeah.
There's of course some standing order requirements in terms of the proximity to the original decision, can be done. But then there's a chop in the process in that an active decision needs to be made by council to activate the transfer of the assets, and that's in March next year, and you could vote that down at that point in time. So there's two safeguards, and the one's already on the radar, which is the March decision, but you could put another one on the radar in the new council term as well if you chose to.
Any council at any time has always had the ability to change, stop, review, anything. It's just the only matter to consideration is the degree of difficulty, because some decisions are significant and would then require, special consultation to unwind that decision, etc. Like, for example, if you were to I don't know, remove land out of a reserve or something like that. So it's really only a degree of difficulty to unwind any council decision. So in actual fact, any council's not bound by anything at all. That's democracy. Councillor Mallett?
I have a slightly different view. I think the council's the council until it's the election.
Oh, yes, I agree.
So you don't lose any power up until midnight.
No, that's right.
Because someone has to be in charge, and as long as you're carrying out your duties responsibly and doing the right process, and then as has been eloquently said 100 times, at any 1 minute past midnight, the new guys come in and they can accept or reject what you've done, subject to contractual agreements and all that sort of stuff. But you're dead right. I'm not sure that it's quite as dire as...
No, I mean, the issue is you wouldn't vote on the 29th to build Claudelands. You might vote on a week later.
Okay, so let's not get into a debate.
No, I'm just saying major capital. In other words, the issue...
Yeah, but no, Martin,
hang on.
The decisions, I was speaking, the decisions,
You were.
the council obviously decides by majority the decision is right or it's not. Doesn't matter if it's 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, so
It's right, the decision's made there.
the point has been made that elected members are elected into that role until they are unelected in that role. You're quite right, Councillor Mallett. So are there any other questions? Okay, so simply we are just referring this report through to council on the 29th, so I'm happy to... Oh, is that being moved? No. Yep. I'll move... Oh, sorry, it's been moved and seconded, yep. Is there any debate? All those in favour? Are there any against? No, that's carried. Thanks, Mr CE. Right, item 13, page 119. This is another one of the last policy reviews again. This is freeholding of council endowment land. And, same characters.
Yes, you've got us for one more after this as well.
Yes,
We're very fortunate.
Excellent.
Just can I make a quick comment on this one? So this is a policy that's been in place for a long time and encourages lessees to freehold the land, effectively to buy out council's ownership of the land. It's very much to our advantage for them to do so. These leases are peculiar beasts and we get a very, very minimal return on our investment. And it, of course, allows redevelopment of the sites typically. I would just draw your attention to schedule 1 and 2 on page
128.
128, thank you. Just in terms of the Schedule 1, the domain endowment leasehold lands, 225 Day Street, we have a pending freeholding application for that property. Wasn't able to be processed in time for this council, but it will certainly be coming forward to the next council very early in its meeting cycle. 189 Fox Street, we're currently processing an assignment of that lease, and we expect that that will probably be a freeholding application as well. And since these documents were prepared, we have freeholded 92 Clyde Street, so that will come off Schedule 2 of the municipal endowment leasehold lands. Other than those, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Nicholas. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Look, I've just got a couple of questions. They're intertwined. I note that on page 124-21, the value is based on best and highest use. Council receives full value. Now, in the actual policy on page 131, we talk about freeholding shall proceed at 100% of the current market value. And then I know I'm shooting ahead to the item 14, but we talk about it not less than 90% of the estimated market value. So I'm just wondering what it is. I mean, I think it should be at the market value.
And it is. So the policy that you've referred to that we'll be debating after this one does not apply to the freeholding of these lands. So these lands proceed to be freeholded at 100% of the market value. Just addressing your comment around best and highest use, we have to remember that we own the land, the improvements, the house, the buildings, whatever is on the land is typically owned by the lessee. So the best and highest use ensures that the valuation takes into account what a new purchaser might do in terms of maximising the value of that property. Does that answer your question?
The one on Clyde Street is bowl the property and put up 20 townhouses.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I'm sure that's what will happen in due course.
It will please Councillor Gallagher because they will be so well designed. Beautifully designed.
Right, other questions?
How many homes for families?
Andrew
Yeah,
Struck, mate.
no other questions? No? Do we have a mover? Recommendations on page 23. Councillor Mallett is moving, and a second. Oh, sorry, I thought you.
Scratching my head, you know, I'm happy to move it. No, I'll move it.
That's my peripheral.
Like
vision.
being an auction.
Yeah. Seconded by Deputy Mayor. Is there any debate? All those in favour? Any against? Everyone's very quiet. I mind reading that you all said yay and nay then. Yeah, no one said yes or no. Okay, so page 134, we're on to item 14. Another policy. Sale, oh no, sorry. We've just done that, haven't we?
One was the endowment lands and this is the...
Oh,
council
sale
land.
and disposal of council land.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness, okay.
So
Yep.
this policy, Madam Chair, applies to all of council's land that is not captured by that earlier policy, so not specifically endowment land. Substantially the same as the previous policy, with one change that is noteworthy, and that is that we're just recommending that we adopt that at not less than 90% of estimated market value determined by a registered valuer. The reason for that is that we will always attempt to get the best and most money we possibly can from the sale of council lands, but there are times when in negotiating sale and purchases you have two valuations, they're typically 5–10% apart. This just provides a little bit of leeway for staff to conclude a sale or purchase without the need to keep coming back with iterations of that agreement to the council for approval. That 90% figure is consistent with PwC's recommendations in terms of sale of council land, and it's also consistent with what some other councils do. It's not die-in-the-ditch stuff by any means. If you feel it's inappropriate, that's fine. We just go back to the full value. But it does provide staff with a little bit of leeway in negotiation.
Thanks, Nicholas. Councillor Mallett?
I think I agree with that. Just the issue is that once you start setting 90%, that's there's room to move. Yeah. And so it just creates you're moving away from your apparently objective, independent valuation, and it just creates some degree of uncertainty as to is the other guy's bid real? Is there something shonky going on? So I guess but that's just the reality of things. If you want these things to happen, you've got to have some degree of slack. I appreciate that.
Yes, I'd agree with that, but I would say that at the end of the day, the decision to sell is still brought to council, and that if we were selling it less than the full estimated market value supported by valuation, that would be noted in the report, and you could challenge us on our decision at that time.
Is there any... Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Just, is there any risk for us in advertising the fact by way of a public staff report for future negotiations?
No, I don't think so. I mean, typically in negotiations where you're relying on valuations, if I commissioned 3 valuations for the same property from 3 different valuers, I'd get 3 different figures. You would hope that they would be, within 5 or worst case 10% of each other, but I have known occasions when they've been radically different, even though the basis has been exactly the same. So I suppose what this does is it recognises that in these transactions there's a certain amount of negotiation and a certain amount of leeway.
Okay.
And you imagine, and the valuations are separate, so they're not our valuation than theirs. It's more about are they within that threshold that we've agreed. So there is some risk, as Councillor Mallett's pointed out, that they may target their
Yeah.
valuations on that space. But
Yeah.
generally, if they're independent of each other and it's a coming together and they're within that threshold, then it gives us the ability to close the deal, as you like.
Councillor King?
We're not always in a rising market either,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's right. That's
Sorry, what'd you say, Andrew?
we're not always in a rising
Yeah,
market.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Millett, did you have another question?
Oh, I was going to say sort of what Andrew said then. I mean, the market will determine anyway. If there's half a dozen people biting to get the thing, then it'll go up. You know, you don't have to worry about your valuation. There's genuine desire, and in the situation when it's not, then we're selling in a bad market, and we just got to take. You know, if it's out, we then decide, do we want to sell it or yeah.
I think in most cases, this will apply where we've got a little bit of funny severance land, typically, you know, a triangle off a roundabout or something like that, where there is only one potential purchaser, and you know, the price would be negotiated.
In that case, there's a market of one, isn't there?
Well, yes, and not even that occasionally. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that's been moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Mallett. Any debate? All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. All right. So no one is allowed a bathroom break because we're sitting on quorum. All right. Growth funding. Oh no, road reserve and park naming policy. Item 15, page 141. We've got Julie and Deborah. Thank you. You can take the report as read. I just spoke to the Mayor before. I'm just wondering if this is a way forward, and she had some comments to make, and they kind of line up with some of mine. But we'll go with questions first, and then I just have some concerns in the policy, about the policy, and I would be proposing to refer it to council until those have been
That's a
addressed.
recommendation to council, is there, because there is some opportunity in our council.
Yeah, there is, yeah, but we'll go to questions
Yeah.
first. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, you had your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Deborah, look, it was just a question around general procedures on page 142. There's a new requirement for consultation with Tangata Whenua, pre-application. I presume that's the developer that has to have that discussion. And is that happening now? Because I'm aware that Waikato Tainui have made comments in the past over...
Sure. It happens when the developer is proposing a Maori name. This is a new requirement, asking them to consult with Maori to see whether or not there are any particular cultural values in that area that the developer should know
So you
about.
wouldn't consult on Council Gallagher Drive, for example?
I beg your pardon?
You wouldn't consult with Tangata Whenua on Councillor Martin Gallagher Drive?
I'm sure they would say it was fine.
That's your last question? Okay.
I'll move.
Well, no, okay, so you're going to move it, okay. I just have some questions. Why are we including council facilities in this policy? We haven't had a policy before for council facilities, and it's not like we open a new one every year. In fact, probably we'd be lucky if we looked at every 10 years we opened a new council facility in the spectrum of a stadium, a Claudelands, a library. Why have we included facilities?
Chair, we've included facilities because we haven't had a policy that has covered facilities, and so we thought this was most probably an opportune time to actually help clarify that and include it in this policy. The decision for the naming of those facilities lies with council, and so it would always be a recommendation to the council to decide the name.
So maybe, is it not, we haven't had a policy for the very fact that we haven't needed one because we don't often open council facilities?
Yes, that's most probably correct. However, good practice would always encourage you to have your rules in place before you actually need them.
Okay, so just walk me through if, and I have had some experience with this, well, with the old policy. If a group and this is true, like Toti, want to, they've had discussions with me around renaming a road in the central city, like I think Ward Street or something, Ward Lane, into changing the name to Hilda Ross. Now, if they went through this policy, there's a whole variety of steps that they have to do, including consultation, they have to provide evidence, then that goes to the planning department.
And we write a report and give council a recommendation, one way
Okay.
or the other.
Yep. Now, if they decided to, so if council, we're sitting around here and we come up with an idea that we want to change a name, my reading of this policy means we also, the governing body, have to make an application, provide evidence, come to you for you to write a report back to us. So why is that, given that we're the final decision maker? Why can't we simply, as elected members, if we were building a Founders Theatre, decide on the name, however we want to make that process? Why do we have to follow?
Well, I suppose
all of that?
ultimately, road naming is always up to council. But I think you would want to have a procedure to follow so that all of the decision-making was transparent.
But it is by virtue of being council, transparent. Did you, Councillor Forsyth, then Councillor Gallagher. Oh, Calvin, did you?
Yeah, I thought the response around the facilities was around the, from the briefing that we had, there was a direct direction, that was the direction from council, that's. what
So
the right
elected
said within
members
the
wanted
policy.
to include facilities?
Correct.
Okay, I
That
wasn't
was
at that
direct,
briefing.
Because we'd had it as another process, and it was quite clear from all councils, they felt that it should be around facilities and that should come back to council.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Councillor Forsyth?
I think it's just the road naming, whether it's on new roads, it says here, so that's page 3 at the top. Second bullet point, council will give preference to names which reflect. Is there no particular order, or is there a priority in the list?
No.
So just the identity of Hamilton, could that include not only the city, but the actual location of the street or the locality?
Well, we think the points that are being made here give enough scope for many things to be considered. If you go down to the next one, the historical significance of the area, the particular area. You know, so I gather that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's, I mean, you're being quite specific about the things that preferences will be, name preferences will be given. See, the identity of Hamilton, well, that's one thing, but the identity of a particular area might be something else. I mean, it might be a swampy area, it might be flat or valley or hilly or hot or cold or whatever. So, I mean, what I'm suggesting is that it doesn't actually detail that. It doesn't say, well, you might want to call a road, I don't know, Kakatea Drive or something like that, which doesn't necessarily have any overriding or whole kind of Hamilton identity, but there might be just within the area that the new roads are being proposed, but that is an identity. So I just didn't think it was obvious enough. So is there any way to add that, or is that not the intention?
How would you be thinking of phrasing that?
The identity of the location of the roads, of the new roads.
I think so.
Was that your question?
Yes, I mean, I'm just trying to think back through your chair when we were having the discussions around this with the working group and with the developers. Some of it was around, we left it fairly wide in terms of the identity of Hamilton to allow people to represent a range of identities. And so it is quite wide, we recognise that. If you'd like to make it narrower, we can either add another bullet item or we can add words.
I'm just suggesting that it's not suggesting that that will be accepted. It's not by not having that in there, it seems to me by reading this, well, okay, you've got to have an identity of Hamilton, it's got to have historical significance, blah, 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 but it doesn't, if I was to read this policy, it doesn't suggest to me that, oh, well, I can name roads that have I don't know, recognise a particular area or the particular area that the roads are going to be in. That's all. I'm just interpreting what's written down here because obviously the working group has an intent, but I'm saying that's not what I'm reading from what you've suggested. Does that make sense?
We would be happy to take any suggestions for wording that you'd like to include.
Okay, well, give me a minute then and I'll think about some. Look, the other one was deceased people. Do they have to be deceased to be important to the history of the area?
They don't have to be deceased. There is, if you look back at many different policies in terms of road naming, the general preference is to use deceased people because of two reasons. They can't embarrass you, and second of all, some
I beg your pardon? They can't embarrass you. What does that mean?
Rolf Harris is one that they're dealing with in Australia right now.
Changing that.
So you're saying that there are deceased people that haven't done bad things in the past
No,
and
I'm
wouldn't
not saying
embarrass?
that.
Well,
The
so
point
I don't get
I'm-
what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't get what you're saying.
If you're going to commemorate someone, it's generally a good idea to commemorate someone who probably isn't going to embarrass you. But council can step outside of these. If it wants to name something after a living person, that's fine too.
And again, my point is that in this policy, it's not clear. In this policy, it says council will give preference to names that tick these boxes. And I think...
But you also get down below events, people, and places of significance to Hamilton. So that covers other people as well, or living people.
So why have deceased people who are important then?
Because it's a specific way of recognizing people who were important in the past to the development of the city.
Okay, and I think my point is I'm just asking you to think outside the square, that just because that's the way we've always done things doesn't mean to say that that's the way that we always need to carry on, and that I do believe that there are people that are still alive who are important, have done things historically for the city, and just because they're not dead yet, I don't think that that's a good enough reason for them not to be acknowledged in some way. And again, I don't think that the policy captures that. I think by stating that they have to be deceased really cuts out some people that may very well be worthy of receiving.
Well, as I say, we had
named.
hoped we had covered that in the next bullet point.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that means something quite different. But again, it just depends on what the intent of the policy is. If you want to really focus on deceased people, that's fine. And if you really want to focus on the whole identity of Hamilton, that's fine. It's just an observation and some feedback, really, that I'm giving. Yep. And I would like to see it changed or opened up so that it's not so prescriptive.
Councillor Mallett and Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. I have some sympathy with Margaret's concerns, particularly with regard to the geographical location. I've always thought it was sensible that if you've got a suburb called Melville, that you would have a Melville Road, or if you've got a suburb called Te Rapa, you'd have a Te Rapa Road, and we do have. And I'm not saying that should override other things, but it should be something that should be one of the issues that is considered. So, and it just simply because it does give some degree of, you know you're in Melville when you're on Melville Road. It's in terms of where the heck's Melville Road? Oh, it's in Melville. Although we don't have a Melville Road, I don't think. I'll try to find it in the thing. We don't, but there. So I think that Margaret has got a point on that one. If that was the point you were making,
Try to.
It was one of your points.
So is that the point
Still on question.
of what we're doing here? Are we offering comments, or are we offering feedback, or are we offering...
Every item, yes, absolutely.
Great.
So, question, councillor Gallagher?
Yeah, and I acknowledge I've had opportunities to have input into this particular process, and I still have reservations. I think maybe just some of the language, you know, the word guidelines stressed. For example, Jansen Park, living at the time. Derek Heather Park, living at the time. Go to Brisbane, and I think the great former Lord Mayor Clem Jones took me to a reserve that was named after him. We have a great New Zealander who I think was living when we put him on a banknote because we trusted he'd be cool, and that was Edmund Hillary.
Is this a question?
Well, the point I'm making is I think...
Was it Edmund Hillary?
What's it saying?
Well, I'm making a point that people don't necessarily have to have a connection to Hamilton, right? Helen Clark, does she have a connection to Hamilton? Jim Bolger, does he have a connection to Hamilton? Yes.
Can I, in the way of being helpful,
Yes,
Yeah.
please do.
because we thought it was reasonably clear, we could probably put events, living people. I mean, the point is that I think what the team are trying to put forward is that the point above is about those that are in the history of the area, generally deceased, more longer term, and that those the events, people, and places significant to the community or communities in Hamilton, and we could word that simply by saying alive or current.
Well, just about
So-
people.
Or yeah.
So, and it's,
Yeah,
look,
so
it's
you
late in the, through the chair, I have the floor, it's late in the afternoon, and I respect that maybe between now and the council, a wee bit of more tweaking, that's all. I think, you know, it's in the general direction. I think you have to be careful when we talk to be easy to spell and easy to pronounce. Who defines that? You know, and that's an interesting one. We've got well, Chinese community, for example, have been here for over 100 years. Some people may find some names of Chinese origin harder to pronounce. So I think we've got to be careful. The hyphen, McLaughlin Barnes, there's lots of... So could we just perhaps... And I think probably if we can have a degree of comfort, and it's clearly spelled out, these are sort of guidelines for consideration. Do you see what I'm coming up? But they're not... I think they're not prescriptive. So it's not, again, having them in, but they're not a prescriptive. They're a series, if you like, of guidelines that we need to weigh up. And I guess in terms of any introduction that we're clear when we have a policy. And the reason I raise that is that in, say, 10 years' time, a whole lot of new people come along, and they may take, if we don't word it right, absolutely literally. We say, well, no, the intent of council at the time was these are good guidelines, and that's what they are, guidelines, but they're not absolutely prescriptive.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Councillor Gallagher's raised a good point, but look, on page 144, it says road reserve and park naming. The purpose of this policy is to outline the high-level approach and guidelines for naming roads and open spaces. I think that's very clear.
Sorry.
Page 144.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, councillor,
That's
the old policy. You need to be looking from page 150, which is the track changes in the new policy,
or 162, which
or
is the new
162,
policy.
which is a clean copy of the new policy.
Well, it deletes it, doesn't it?
Madam Chair, I just, if I may suggest, because of the time and the numbers, that it may be that, you know, we recommend to council, and perhaps, dare I say it, staff just take account of some of the further feedback and present a slightly fine-tuned document. Would that work?
I'm not sure that we've really given any clear direction whether staff could actually go back and make those changes. I'm pretty confident about that. I think, look, my 2 cents worth, I think we should have, you know, it's interesting, isn't it, over the years, sometimes it's what we think are quite small policies, we all have quite a different opinion on them, and the results can sometimes be significant in naming of places. I think we should have formed a working group to really chew over this. We didn't. It went to a few briefings. So I'm not sure we've really given staff a very, very clear direction. So I have some sympathy for them. on that, but I'm speaking for you. Am I right?
I'd like to remind council that you asked us to look at this policy.
To review it, yes.
And we did speak to some key stakeholders. And the feedback the key stakeholders gave us was that they wanted clearer direction. They wanted a more specific list of rules that they could then use in terms of putting forward applications. That's why we have tried to frame it more than just a guideline. We have tried to, especially under E, we put E in which says events, people and places significant to a community or to communities of Hamilton, to try and leave it as wide as possible. So that means if someone, for example, has a particular ethnic group and they want to have that reflected, they can have. Just as a point of clarification, in the policies on page 163, point 10, the criteria there are actually the ones that are directed out of, where are they from?
Land Information New Zealand.
Land Information New Zealand, and they
Sorry,
also.
hang on, we'll have to, we'll fail a quorum. Yeah.
Sorry.
But you might as
It's this
well,
one.
you might as well go.
Okay.
Okay.
We're going to end up with this problem several times before the meeting's finished.
So they are out of the standards from Land Information New Zealand. They actually asked us to include these. They were a key stakeholder and they gave us feedback that our old policy really wasn't sufficient in their view, and they asked us to include these.
So have they seen this new policy, those same people?
We have followed their guidelines in building the policy.
Oh, wait, who's that? So this is not, we're not talking about stakeholders as in previous users that have experienced the policy. We're talking about some standards
These
book
are
people.
Land Information New Zealand,
Oh, okay.
at the end of the day, authorizes all of the names that come from council. So this is part of their criteria, that they want these names to be, not include punctuation, not be abbreviated, etc.
Okay, so over the years, I know Councillor Gallagher, myself, Toti, other stakeholders out in the community have had experiences with the policy, not great experiences with trying to get the policy, try to understand it and work through the processes. So we haven't spoken to that kind of a stakeholder group.
Well, we've spoken to surveyors, developers, I think it's covered
Yeah,
in
no,
the
they're not,
report.
well,
So-
developers are, but
We haven't specifically spoken to the elected members who have experienced issues in the past, though we have understood those from the staff's understanding.
okay.
Can I add as well, for you, councillor, point F, flora and fauna significant or important to the history of an area, is point F. You were referring to Kaikatia Drive. So you can use those sorts of names.
But again, it's very prescriptive. It's must include. So there's no, if I go back to the identity of the location, there's nothing there that says if I choose to name a street that reflects the identity of the location, I'm not allowed to have it.
I'm sorry,
I'm just going, if I'm on the right page, 163. I mean, we're talking about,
reflect one or more of the following.
yeah, it says it must include evidence that the names reflect one or more of the following. So my suggestion, as I said at the start, is that if you're going to be that prescriptive, then it doesn't allow for local identity. And that could be anything.
As we said before, we assumed or hoped that E would cover that. Events, people, and places significant to a community or communities in Hamilton, which
Yeah, and
we
as I
thought left the door open for
Yeah.
pretty much anything.
Well, no, it doesn't include other things. It doesn't include it. Look, it might be a particular weather pattern. It might be
It's an event.
some. Look, I can't think off the top of my head. I can't think of anything else. But what I'm saying is that if you are prescribing that something must include evidence of these 6 things or 5 or 6 things, I would like to include identity of that particular location, not just identity of Hamilton, because Hamilton has different microclimates, it has different, I'm repeating myself.
For clarification, could we add under A, could we add the identity of Hamilton and local identity? Would that address?
Sorry,
And
could you
or
speak into the
local
mic?
identity.
Sorry. Could we add under A, the identity of Hamilton and local identity?
And or.
And or?
Yeah.
And we can certainly take out deceased in D and just have it be people who were or are significant.
Yeah, that would be
'Cause
great.
that could cover, that
Yeah.
could cover, and
Thank you.
Kelvin, no, he's good.
Then that would have to be were or and or are.
Were or are.
Were or and or are.
And if you get a Mr Harris, you've got to change the name quickly.
Councillor Forsyth, does that cover off those concerns?
Yes, happy about that, thank you. But just how can we capture, I mean, at one point in time, and who knows, we may very well go back to it, but acknowledging leaders like Councillor Gallagher described. I mean, we do have many Queen Victoria and Albert and Elizabeth, and we might want to call one street Kingi Tuheitia Street, I don't know, which would cover off some of those, would be included in some of those clauses, but
So we could add
could we
in the
capture
G
that?
there, something around the national, you wouldn't want to go international, would you? You
Other
wouldn't have
countries just
Obama
tear down
flags?
statues.
You might have the Queen, well, yeah, true. So how would you word that? How would you word that?
so
Kelvin,
events, people and places significant to a community or communities in Hamilton, it's common nationally or internationally,
does
with
that-
national or international significance or meaning or, I don't know. I just think we're narrowing it.
Does that work?
We can do that.
Yeah?
I'm going to suggest, if you're going to take an amendment,
Yeah, because, well, Deputy Mayor's moved.
No, I'll withdraw
Okay,
the resolution, and councillor
Okay.
Forsyth can then move what
What-
she wants.
well, those changes can be captured anyway.
Well, if you
They don't have
Just
to
happy
be,
to
those
change
changes
them.
don't have to be in
those
the
slight
motion.
addition, yeah.
The motion can be to reflect the discussion, or however we usually word things like that, eh?
Is everyone else happy with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I'm still not comfortable with including council facilities, but that's just my thing. Sorry, councillor Gallagher, did you have a question?
I was just going to suggest that, we send this as a recommendation to council, with
Yeah.
those track changes.
Yeah,
And that the policy be reviewed in 12 months' time, and it may just be a 5-minute. If it's working, it may be just a thank you very much. So why I suggest that is it's slightly new, and it's just a matter of just seeing. So if we do along the way pick up any unforeseen fish hooks, then we can sort it. So I'm not necessarily talking about a major review. I'm just talking about a bit of a warrant of fitness in a year's time, really. And if it's all going smooth, it'll be a 5-minute report. Thanks very much, because the General Manager will report that, no issues that we've come across. And here we go, really.
I'm just wondering, Councillor Gallagher, I mean, we, as staff, sort of review policies ongoing. And
yeah.
if they're
I
not
don't even
working,
need to do that.
so if they're not working, we would, and we felt they needed a review, we would bring that to the appropriate committee or council.
The only
I'm
thing
not sure we would
I'm
necessarily need to
interested
dictate
in,
12
and whether
month
you
review.
pick it up in your GM report, I'm not sure. All I'm interested in is just how it actually is going. We've made some changes and how it is going, and I'm always interested in terms of, we're a very diverse cosmopolitan city, and if in fact we've got the button right, really, and certainly I would want to know.
Can I suggest we pick it up as part of that policy effectiveness report? We spoke of it at the brief.
Whatever, as long as I know where it is and where to find it, and you're telling me it's an effective, and I've got to read it, and got to find it. Don't bury it.
All right. Okay, so, look, my suggestion then would be, look, this is still going to council.
Yeah.
So do we note in that recommendation with changes? How do we normally do this when we pick up changes? Yeah, so, so if we look on the recommendation on page 141, open space council, approved for adoption, including changes recommended at the committee or made at the committee to be included?
Including track changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that will come back
Yep.
anyway, but I just want to be specific and without picking up the words, because the staff have done that, the changes that we've discussed and want you to incorporate. So if that can be added, is there a mover?
I'll move.
Councillor Forsyth will move. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mallett has seconded. Is there any debate? No debate. All those in favour?
Yeah, good. Just thank, I mean,
Is that
I just
debate?
thank, in spite of it, thank you staff for your work, believe it or not. Because it's not easy.
It's always
It's not an easy one.
These
So,
funny ones, eh?
yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's been moved, seconded, and everyone's voted for it, and no one's voted against it. Okay, thank you. Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 16, page 169. This is the growth funding policy.
This will be quick.
And we have Calvin again.
Yes, I'm very fortunate.
You are. You can take the report as read.
I can take the report as read, there's only a minor change, so
No,
I'm happy to.
excellent. So is there any questions? Page 169.
The only substantive change is on point 18 on page 170.
Yeah.
So the growth policy is there to enable developers who aren't in the line, if you like, of our development program to be able to self-fund. So well, the feedback we had was that we used to have incremental as a standard policy of doing infrastructure funding. We've removed that, given advice, so that we can then do open negotiations and that we work that through on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Councillor Mallett?
Thank you, Kelvin. Just to be really clear, so what we're doing is saying to people, so you've got, so this is that some guy goes out and develops up a development, residential or industrial, and puts in all the pipe work for 100 houses,
Yep.
pays for it all. Then someone,
No, so just to, so they're going to put in a pipe work for 100 houses.
Yeah.
And then and he's doing it all himself.
Yeah.
Because it's not within our normal funding structure.
yeah,
And then we might want to say, well, look, you're doing it for 100 houses, but we've got to cater for growth in that cell of 1,000. So we've got to upsize that, and we pay for the upsize. The debate about that then is, what methods do we use to
Yes.
pay for the increase of
Okay.
that upsize?
so, and just so he will, so one of the ways to do it is he pays for the 100
Yep.
and we pay for the other 900.
Yep, so
And
there's
so
two.
so that's 1,000 houses, we pay 9/10 of it.
Correct.
That's one way, that's the average.
Well, that's the incremental contribution, or there's the volumetric contribution. Andrew, can you just give me the
So
right
the-
definitions on that?
So just sticking with the 900 versus
Yep.
500. So that sets out the basis of payment. So you can either pay that by volume of pipe. So, it'll cost X dollars to dig a trench and put the pipe in, so you can split it onto sheer volume apportionment.
Yep.
Or you could just pay the next incremental pipe size up to
Yeah.
1,000 lots. And this policy is currently set for that incremental size up, which for council is the best way to go usually.
Yeah.
Usually. But what this change does is allows that to be a negotiation as part of the PDA on a case-by-case basis as development goes forward.
Correct. So the developers were telling us that they felt that was the inability to have the negotiation because it was stipulated was the sticking point for them. And the reality is this is for developers of large scale. So, for example, Porters or Ruakura, it's not your average developer doing its normal subdivisions. It will be large scale where they have large scale uptake. So we've listened to that and said, okay, we'll do it on a case-by-case negotiation basis for what makes sense to get the project away.
So that means any payable by council to the developers will be made an incremental. So we'll just pay for the extra bit that we
No, so
require.
we've taken, no, that's what we used to say. So,
Okay, sorry.
we used to say it was we would only do it on an incremental basis.
Yeah.
And we've removed that and we've gone silent on how we will do that. So which means that it's a negotiation. So we've taken that
Okay.
specific piece out, which enables developers to come to us and say, look, what works best for us collectively around
So what you're doing is going from a ironclad thing, this is the way we'll always do it, which has the benefit of protecting you from allegations of favouritism or cheating or getting backhanders and stuff like that,
All that.
but often stops a development from occurring, to a situation where it's open for negotiation. And
Yes.
one of the negotiations might still be to go do that, or it could be that we'll go
Yeah, so
on
quite-
average, or you just pay.
Correct. So that's how we've tried, sorry.
The important point to remember here is only if council can choose whether it wants to negotiate or not. So
Yeah.
council's not compelled to pay anything.
Yeah.
It's just where council says, well, it's in the interest of the structure plan that this pipe's slightly bigger.
Yeah.
Then this is the framework on which we have that conversation. No one compels us to contribute to an upsize pipe. We could just say to the developer, well, you do it on your own, you put the infrastructure in to suit your needs, we'll sort out the rest somehow in another way on another day.
And I understand what you're saying, Andrew, but you run the risk of doing one thing for one guy and then trying to explain why you're not going to do the same thing for the next guy.
In theory, that is.
Well, the theory is you'll say this was good for the city, whereas yours isn't so beneficial.
But again, the nature of the PDA is for the large-scale developers that you wouldn't get. So, for example, Porters and TGH, that scale of sizing, and as Andrew said, it's about where it makes sense for us to work in collaboration to upscale or upsize the infrastructure, knowing that there will be a future need for it. And if there's not that future need, or we don't see that, then we wouldn't obviously enter into that. But the important thing is this is actually about trying to engage the developers to enable them to get things away, which has been a point of, contrary to the Property Council's recent media release, where we are working quite closely with the developers who've got the land and are doing the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So look, just a quick question. If I got on the phone right now to Tainui Group Holdings or any of the other multitude of developers, would they say this was fantastic?
They'd say it's an opportunity, I think, but they wouldn't. It's not the silver bullet. It's certainly not the silver bullet. As I said, it's about scale. So you're not going to find a usual developer who's going to go out and do his normal lot sizes that we would normally see and pay for it himself. He will wait with that in line with what our rollout programs is. But for a large scale, normally industrial, that's what we are seeing come through the door, then yes, it gives them an avenue to work with the council to get generally good commercial propositions away. Yeah. So, not every developer would say this is really useful for us, but the feedback we've had from developers was if they could see that commercial opportunity, simply saying incremental meant that they only had one way of negotiating with us. We've taken that away, so they've got more opportunities to negotiate on how they might share those costs.
So they would be happy?
I would hope so.
That's the nature of the PDA anyway, isn't it? It is a negotiated thing.
Absolutely.
And what I didn't realise that our PDAs were restricted. That this was one thing that wasn't negotiatable.
Yeah, initially it wasn't. So
okay.
it was stipulated that we would only have one method of that debate. So now we're taking that away in response to working with developers.
Okay, are there any further questions?
What's the argument against it?
The argument against
doing this?
From a council perspective?
Well, I assume councils considered this previously, or I mean, there will be another argument somewhere. And
I think the concept, and talking to Chris, and Andrew might want to jump in, the history of it was that to get something away, we wanted to be quite clear around how we would negotiate that upsizing. And we thought that this was, it would enable some clarity around costings and those things. However, what we've since heard is that it may actually be an inhibitor for the smaller developers because it's generally not in their favour to do it in that approach. So let's take that out and have the negotiation and see how that fits. Because they won't even come to the table to talk about that on that basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Recommendations on page 169. I'll move. Is there a seconder for that? A Deputy Mayor? Any debate? All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Right, Hamilton East Neighbourhood Plan Adoption Report, and this is item 17 on page 178. Julie back in the hot seat.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any streets to be named in there?
And Rachel.
Not that
Yes.
I'm aware of, councillor.
No, but we're changing Steel Park to Mallet.
That'll go down well.
No
won't it? Yeah.
consultation whatsoever. Okay, Julie, did you want to present the report or take it as read? Up to you.
Yes, thank you. Maybe if I just highlight a couple of things. So the Hamilton East Neighbourhood Plan has been out for consultation with the public. This is a non-statutory plan, therefore we're not required to do a extensive consultation, and we focused our consultation on the local community. That included having an open day in Hamilton East on the street, and talking to some of our Pacific stakeholders, in particular the Hamilton East Community Trust. Out of that consultation, we had 60 submissions through the Have Your Say site, and we spoke to approximately 100 people on the day we were on the streets in Hamilton East, as well as speaking to the Community Trust and the various advisory committees. The only changes that we are recommending between the draft and the final Hamilton East Neighbourhood Plan is really around clarification of words. People did not understand what we meant by gateways, and they thought we were going to build a gate. And so we've changed the wording around that. And to add one project in there, which is the Clean Street project, which is a reference to the waste project that's being undertaken at the moment. And that was really raised by the community because of their concerns about where there is densification, how the rubbish collection will be treated for those areas where there's densification. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Mallet.
Just and this is a personal view, so don't take any offence. And maybe my colleagues are different, but I find that childish is too hard too strong a word, but I think you could save a lot of paper. Just put them down as bullet points, and I would find it easier to read if they was just about Hamilton East, and that whole page could be in there. I don't need the pictures, and I don't think the pictures help me. Now, I'm just a personal feedback, so that's just a presentation thing.
Sorry, Councillor Mallet, what page were you talking about?
Oh, particularly I was talking about pages of the actual plan.
Yep.
7, 8.
6 and 9. Oh, sorry, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, there you go.
Agree with that.
And it's also on page 10 as well. Well, that's just one thing. The other thing is, there are some sort of CPIs, performance indicators through them. I'm just concerned. I presume the council's going to be paying for most of this, although a lot of things are done by the church and things like that. How do we know it's working? When do we know that it's not working? What will we do to change if it's not working? How do we measure and monitor the impact of this thing?
So just to talk about the projects are three types of projects. One is where they are already projects that are included in one of council's other plans.
Yep.
And then there's projects that are specific to Hamilton East, and then there are projects that are community-led projects. Those are outlined on page 30 and 31. In terms of how do we know if it will be working or not, we've put some KPI measures on page 28. And we'll try to target in the outcomes that we're seeking. So one of the outcomes is about a vibrant village, and therefore we've put the first KPI measure in, which is about the annual growth of Hamilton East aligns to the Hamilton's annual GDP growth. The second one is about the heritage. So again, a lot of feedback around heritage. An increase in the number of people, so again about trying to measure vibrancy of that Hamilton East community, safety, and then the last one was the connection one. It is very difficult always to try and find a PI or an outcome measure that exactly aligns to your outcome. And so we've tried to pick a range, in this case 5 of them, that actually try and give us an indication of what we think is happening. These are all measures that we can measure and report back on.
The things that, yeah, and thank you, some of them are already in the river plan and and the CBD transformation plan, and some of them are done by the church and for other people. To the extent that things are going to be done by council, what's that going to cost?
If you again look on page 30 and 31, we have indicated in the second column there if they are funded or unfunded. So where it says funded, it means they are already included in a current annual plan or an LTP plan budget. Where it's unfunded, of course, it will have to come back as a project to council to approve through our normal annual plan or LTP process. You might, as an example, the Oz Roads project is already funded. It actually doesn't require much funding from council. It's just some council staff time. The Steel Park playground is funded because it was in the last year's budget and we rolled it over into this current financial year. So there's a number of projects in there that we already have in place and they are marked as funded.
But the Wellington Street Beach development and Ferrybank, those are enormous.
Yes, yeah. And they are in other, so Wellington Street and Ferrybank are in the river plan, not particularly at Hamilton East.
Yeah, they're unfunded.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
The second part of Councillor's question was around monitoring. How will we monitor this in the future? But then we just had the CE item 18 on the strategic plan implementation report, and he's got in that report that the Hamilton East plan will come back to the appropriate committee of the new council, and yes. It looks like that'll be and reported annually. So that's how that particular plan will be monitored.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are there any other questions?
No, a couple of quick comments, but...
Okay, hang on. Sorry, Councillor,
when you want to go
I
into
had a
debate.
question. Just give me a moment.
Oh,
yep. Don't.
Got one.
So do have
Councillor Forsyth, yeah, and then Councillor Gallagher. This is troublesome.
Yeah, does the Hamilton East cemetery, is that a part of the Hamilton East plan or is that something separate?
Which page is? Yes, it's within the area.
Plan area, yep.
Yes.
Okay, so that would fall under the heritage. Well, it's not exactly living heritage.
Deceased heritage.
There is no specific project around the cemetery for the Hamilton East plan.
Sorry, say that again. So it is included?
It is included in the Hamilton East area.
Yes.
There is no specific project identified in the Hamilton East neighbourhourd plan in relation to the cemetery.
Okay. But there is in the cemetery management
plan
around
the
heritage, isn't there? Yeah.
There is a cemetery management plan that covers that cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Just sort of thinking about that connection because I mean, the Hamilton Gardens and is it Rutherford Lane or Hungerford? Sorry, Lane is just as big a part, and it's an important connection. And I just think that without forgetting about it, and yes, referring to maybe if it's referred to via another plan, but I think it's a really important part of the identity and obviously the history of Hamilton East as well. Yeah, a lot of founding families have their connections there, buried there, and war heroes, etc.
You raise a good point, because why is it called living heritage? Is heritage not about past, present and protecting future? Is that not what heritage is about?
I would agree.
And it mentions archaeological sites, which I don't know.
I think the word living is meant to reflect that heritage is something that we want to be thinking about now, all the time, rather than something we just think of as something in the past. Okay. And so the word living's been put in there to try and activate the statement rather than just have it as a
Yeah, I do.
past statement.
Okay. Is there, sorry, I'm just quickly scanning, there is there'd be a principle or a goal somewhere where you can pick up Councillor Forsyth's comments, because I agree, around the Hamilton East Cemetery, somewhere in there, that could, it's not active places. It's not living heritage. Is it, there's stories or something, isn't there?
Well, we could actually, if you look at living heritage, which is on page 20 and 21, you know, we do reference the heritage plan. We could also put another project in there that references the cemetery management plan for that cemetery.
And it's just about connecting, because we do cross-reference that in a lot of our other plans. And this, you know, talks about the river plan, so I think it just cements that as a,
Yep, thank you.
it's a good point. Councillor Gallagher?
Yes. Just in terms of the, do you think we capture enough our pre-European settlement Maori history in terms of this document? I don't know. I don't know what you.
We do have, again, on page 21, the Maori landmarks in terms of, you know, trying to capture that. We did, in our stakeholder engagement, talk to, and Mona, I think we addressed any issues they had raised, so there wasn't any feedback that we had that it hadn't been addressed.
Mona, did you want to add any comment to that?
No, I think Julie's covered.
Yep.
Do you think it's just, we're always really interested, obviously, if we've got captured, really?
Yeah, I guess with the Maori landmarks.
Yeah.
You could sit at the mayor's seat.
Don't let her see it.
You're in it.
I am.
Turn the TV off.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of the Māori landmarks document, there are some sites identified in there, so those are captured in the plan. And also it opens up opportunities for the hapu groups, which are the sub-tribe groups, to identify other historical stories as well within Hamilton East, which is part of the heritage plan.
Sure, and certainly in terms of the apps and their heritage signage and, you know, just weaving that history as well and, you know, with the technology. No, okay, thank you. Just the other question, in page 16, and I'd like you to thank the members of the public who are sitting at table 32 in a cafe, and that's really kind of them to volunteer for this project. I wonder, and I raise this, and it seems to me, if you're the mayor, you get the clean streets mentioned. That's good. I support on that. Do we still go far enough, and help me, the deputy mayor, with regard to the Grey Street precinct? Now, Steel Park ticked the box, but bearing in mind we've got the regional council-owned property opposite Steel Park, which is occupied, I think, by a liquor outlet at the moment. You know, there are some certainly great potentials for partnership with environment, you know, with the regional council. And we talk about street furniture and furnishings. I know Lois Livingston historically, under the Simcock Council, made a submission, I think, at that time was at the Redmond Council, around a sort of a significant revamp of the Grey Street precinct. So I think we've got the blossom trees near the gardens, and I think we're doing some really good thinking, good work around the medical precinct, you know, and talking to people like Acknowledge, Ian McMichael and other stakeholders for their really good input. I'm just wondering if we've still captured yet the Grey Street shopping restaurant type precinct and the sort of development opposite the Steel Park. I mean, I think there's some really... Do you have a...
I do have a view.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate to attend the Osroads workshop project, and part of that project is not only looking about connection, so the movement of people and traffic, but we also talked particularly around the treatment of the streets. So to be able to create that sense of a village, we were talking about what do you put in place, and we were down standing by opposite Steel Park. What road treatments do you put in place to create that sense of arrival at the village? And that's at both ends. So I think we must really have, I think that Ausroads project will come back with a very clear direction around that. And to complement that, we have in here our footpath treatments, planting and street furniture, which is along the Grey Street.
And what about the things like lighting, new lighting, eventually, potentially new lighting?
Yes, that's also included under the safety project, so that's also within the Hamilton Village.
I mean, I know
about the
places
lighting.
like Hood Street got a lot of flack, but would you go back to the old Hood Street? No, you wouldn't. Doing up Victoria Street got a lot of flack. Would you go back to the old Victoria Street? No, you
You're
wouldn't.
asking questions, man.
Well, that's a question. It's a rhetorical question.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's all right. So I'm just wondering, you know, and we may not, it may not be in the budget, or it may not come out of O&M, but I just feel we could capture it a bit better, or be more descriptive about an aspiration. You're saying wait for the Ausroad project?
I think one of the challenges with activation of a neighbourhood is that it's often a number of small things that will actually activate a neighbourhood. And so what we've tried to do in this plan is then capture that range of things. And so they're not all clumped together in one big long list. So we've said that the Ausroad projects will have a significant impact. We do recognise there's street furniture, you know, cleaning up the streets and what they look like will have another impact. The safety projects, which talks about our lighting, you know, that feeling of safety, including things like looking at whether we have a city safe patrol in the area as well. So I think there's a range of things, and personally I think we have got a number of projects that will make a difference, not necessarily all at once, but over the period of time, they are projects that will make a significant difference.
I mean, this is not a pipe dream, but even the underground reticulation around some of our older streets, Firth Street, McFarlane Street, and we don't have the agreement and the deal at the moment, but I just don't think we should preclude. Ian McMichael and others raised it with me when I was, you know, we shouldn't preclude what we might be wanting to look at in the future around infrastructure development. So I'm just wondering, Madam Chair, yeah, I'll take that word, but I just feel it would be good. That's the only sort of, I think it's a great product, but I think I would just hopefully be a bit more specific on that.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Look, to you both, thank you very much for doing a great job on this. I was on the panel along with Councillor Gallagher, and I was very impressed with the consultation process. Look, I think Hamilton East actually is sitting on a unique opportunity. And if you think about Beale Cottage, for a start, largely forgotten over the last 10 or 12 years, Councillor King and Councillor Gallagher were on a review of Beale Cottage, and I think it could be the jewel in the crown of Hamilton East, our oldest home, and hidden behind trees and a hedge. Well, I think we're dealing to that at the moment. But if you look at the development potential that's coming up, you've got the Hills Laboratory behind Calder Lawson. Now, the Mayor had the Hills owners in her office having a discussion about what they might do. And I think she was very concerned that it capture the character of Hamilton East. So, you know, there's an opportunity coming up, hotel, apartments, whatever. And I'll be looking forward to how that building might be repurposed. If you look at the current Waikato Regional Council site, they want to get rid of that. So what could happen there, right on the river, overlooking, again, inner city apartments in Hamilton East of a high value because of the views. And then you've got the development block that the Regional Council owns, just a little down where the liquor store is. They own that whole block. And their potential was to rehouse themselves there in a new development. And you hope they look at what's been achieved at, I think it's Karaka House, the Wise Trust. Beautiful building, repurposed. It was an old supermarket, hardware shop, plenty of parking there. So that's another huge opportunity. And then you look at the apartment block that's coming up at the west end of Cook Street. And that's going to add more value to the hustle and bustle of Hamilton East. And I don't quite have the details about how many apartments and what commercial space are in that, but that's an exciting opportunity for the developer and for Hamilton East. The Catholic Church, of course, is replacing Euphrasie House, which is a big disappointment to anyone who's got an interest in history. However, they've got the consent to do it, so we've got to move on. And so there will be a new modern structure going in there, I understand, to house the administration of the church. But the chapel, which is significant, is being saved, and that is a trade-off between losing Euphrasie House and the chapel. And then I look at the development that's already occurred, the VW Audi car dealership, and I personally think it's an absolutely stunning building. Many times better than what had earlier been proposed on that site, until the dealership family purchased the site and did what they did. So I think congratulations for the work you've done. This is an exciting document. We're on the verge of other things happening in Hamilton East that doesn't cost us a penny, it's developers' money. We just need to make sure that what they build meets our urban design expectations. And I think if you look at the car dealership, that's a good example of an outstanding building. Thank you. I'm happy to move.
Yeah.
I'll
I did hate to interrupt your question, and I saw the staff thinking,
Oh, was that a
now, is
question?
there a question coming?
No,
But I wasn't going
I'm
to
going to
stop
have 10
that
seconds of the
eloquent
debate because I know time's
speech.
moved on. When you're ready.
So it's been moved by the Deputy Mayor and
Seconded.
seconded by Councillor Gallagher. So Councillor Gallagher,
Well, if we're
turn
in-
to speak, because we're well into debate.
No, look, everything
Councillor
the Deputy
Fawcett.
Mayor said, and it was, as a prominent East Ward councillor myself, of course, it was a privilege actually to be on this group and thank people, the Mayor and co, who suggested I go on it. And I'm not seeking the Mayor's approval, but I'm a fair-minded person. I've got to tell you, in my considered view, I thought Julie did a fantastic job leading this group. You know, I'm the all of them, all of you. No, the staff. But I'm talking about the Mayor. And politically, I think it was a good team. All right, you got a bit of flack along the way, and it was a bit of character building, as you know, and that was all cool. That goes well. But I actually have to say that I was really sort of sitting there on the panel and watching Julie and Gordon actually as a team. I thought they did well. And I think we actually have a right, you know, so that's the political bit, and then you have your dare I say it, the professionals bit. But I think we've pulled it together, and with one or two minor qualifications, and albeit even on the clean street stuff, we're hoping to roll that one out to other high density areas. You know, so I think there's some ingredients in the plan. If we can get cracking and get the money and get on with it, will be really good. And I think we need to remind ourselves that this, of course, is one of the oldest areas of Hamilton, and this, there's a fine line between a precinct being really something, and you see that in the wonderful Wellington areas where they've developed parts of Wellington, you know, and they've really grabbed the precincts, or all going to custom, they come bland and boring. And I think we're closer to a precinct becoming really something than the bland and the boring. And I don't think you should underestimate the importance of this plan to sort of to land that. And I'm hoping we're well on the way. And the other thing which I've observed, and again, it was really good to meet the stakeholders, because we've got a very vibrant, significant community. You know, a cross-section of business people, the church groups, the schools, all of that. So I think they're really hot to trot, and hopefully the new council will carry on and really take this, and I think it's very important that we do within the next year or two get some runs on the board for this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth.
Just one thing that I did overlook, and I wondered whether it should sort of be a Hamilton East Village kind of project, but would art, or our art plan or itinerary, inventory, be worthy of connecting to this plan as well? Because I know we do have some pieces of art in the Hamilton East area, and you know, when we're talking about moving Hamilton East from what it is now to something special, I'm sure art has a significant part to play in that transformation. And we've talked about beautification and safety and rejuvenation, but look, I'm sure art is definitely a part of that. So has it been referenced in the plan?
It actually, the art itself hasn't been raised, but it's definitely something we can look at. What has been raised and referenced in the plan is some of the heritage pieces that are sitting within the Hamilton East precinct. So even along Grey Street, we have the hitching posts.
Yes, that's right.
And then you have, of course, within Memorial Park, both old and new parts of Memorial Park, quite significant pieces there. So I think that's a really good point, and we can go back and talk to the arts people
the
about
cloak and Little Bull, and I mean, apart from the other things. Well, a couple of times I've been down the river path, and there's quite a lonely war memorial sort of off to one side.
So
what's happening with that?
that's what we call the old Memorial Park.
Right.
And so there is quite a number of projects in here to look at that area, and that area, which is to the left of the bridge, we have some concerns around the safety, the feeling of safety around that area, and there are a number of projects in the plan to address that as well.
To resurrect it?
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks.
Okay, so we are actually in debate time. Sorry, Deputy Mayor, what?
Just one more thing. I'd just like to
Well-
draw colleagues' attention to page 34. There is a remarkable picture on there, and it's a picture representing Steel Park. And the names of the, mostly men, I think all men, that the trees were planted for around the perimeter there. And I think that's a very important part of early Hamilton history. I just draw your attention to it.
Thank you.
Chair.
I just wonder if the mover, Deputy Mayor, one thing that I've noticed, and actually in the older persons advisory panel, they brought it up, we don't date all of our strategies and particularly our plans. Some have them on the front cover for the implementation period, like, I don't know, 2015 to 2010, or like the Frankton one's an 8-year period. So, Deputy Mayor, but I want to lock it into a resolution so that we do it all the time. So, Deputy Mayor, are you happy to include in your motion a C? I know it's kind of tagging it on, but that all council strategies and plans be dated on the front page in the future?
Yep.
Is that enough, or do I want a date of implementation so that it's 2015 to 2018, or?
Well, if it's being
What do I wanna
approved
say?
tonight,
Just the date.
which will be ratified at council, then it's a September 2016.
Yeah, but what I want to do is make sure that going forward, we actually date all of our plans, because it's actually really helpful to have them on the front cover.
Yeah.
Is that the right wording? That all council strategies and plans be dated on the front page?
What would the date be? The date
The
it
date
would,
of adoption.
I think the
so-
date of adoption.
And it
I
would,
think we should
like,
specify that.
Yeah. But
by
it-
which body? So by the
By council.
by council, because
The
they all
final
get adopted
decision
by
making,
council,
yeah.
do they?
Yeah, and it might just be simply that it's July 2015 or what.
See, the heritage
2015
plan is
to-
dated March.
Yeah, some of them are, some aren't. I just want to capture that for the future. Cool. All right, so you're happy to include that?
Yep.
Mary, is that, you got that? Is that okay?
Yes, I wondered if we could have something like that. All council strategies and plans include the date of adoption on the front cover.
Right.
Is that
That's
neat enough?
okay?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I don't think there are any further speakers. All those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Right, thank you very much. Okay, item 18's been done, so we're nearly there. Item 19, page 187, free Wi-Fi. I'm so sorry you had to stay all this time, but it's been very exciting for you, I'm sure.
I'll move. Chair. I think it's a great idea.
18.
Yeah, but this is only for the report to be received.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Take it as read. Any questions?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
No questions.
That's a lot of money.
65 grand.
Yeah, and that's unbudgeted.
Correct.
Yes, we did
How much does it cost to provide the free Wi-Fi in the outside here area?
The free Wi-Fi is costing us $23,000 a year, but that is as a service over the service provider's infrastructure. So it's over their hardware and systems to provide the service.
So we put the hardware and stuff in?
No, we do
No,
not.
we didn't. How come we didn't do it out there?
Because it was cost inhibitive at the time when we went out for proposal, and the most cost-effective way was to go into a partnership with a commercial organisation that's got the infrastructure.
I see, okay. Okay. Okay, Councillor Mallett?
Thank you. So who will benefit from this?
This will...
Because councillors already get it free, don't we?
No, we don't. I don't.
No. It's
No?
charged, it's
I don't
charged
get it.
through our cost centre.
Pardon?
It's charged through our cost centre, democracy
But,
cost
but,
centre.
but, but I come in here and immediately,
Yeah, but there's a cost to it.
Yeah, council pays.
oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So
Public coming into the council.
so the public can't they? Unless they've got the password or something like that?
Yes, it will be our corporate guest visitors will benefit from it. So the reports to the older person advisory panel people that would, members that would come and work on council matters, and they would benefit from the service.
But can't you just give them the councillors login and then they can,
Then they would be sharing the network with you
I don't think
and your
that's- yeah.
information.
Yeah, there's security issues associated with that. So we would have
Have
to
there
set up
been
a
complaints, Chair?
There have, but, well, see, I asked for this last time as a result of, well, actually realising a long time ago that guests can't access free Wi-Fi. And so, yeah, I guess over time there has been complaints that, I mean, we have a lot of advisory groups and a lot of visitors, and I'm sure staff have an extraordinary amount of external visitors that come and want to be able to use their devices, and it just seems nuts to me that a local government can't offer free Wi-Fi. I know we don't do it at Claudelands, there's a commercial return there,
The Art Museum, we've got friends.
but
at the
we
Art
do
Museum, we've
offer
got other
it
help
outside to the public,
Friends
we
of
do
the
offer it at some parts of Hamilton Gardens
Yeah.
and things like that, so it
Point-
just, it's,
Through the chair, a point to note is that the landscape around Wi-Fi is changing every year, right? So a lot of people have really affordable data plans. That, so it's
Still.
kind of, I understand in the past it was kind of a great thing, but in terms of today,
Yeah.
it's pretty cheap.
you still go to, I mean, you can go to numerous amounts of cafes around town and have free Wi-Fi and often actually.
Do we like, down in the museum, we have friends of the museum and we have those key groups. Do they just password into our system to be able to get on with their work?
No one
No.
passwords into our system.
No.
Well, you see that, to me it's an issue, is if you've got groups who are there, who are supporters and volunteers working with us.
That's right.
And I'm thinking particularly the excellent work which our friends at the museum do, Friends of the Museum, for example, and I suspect Friends of the Gardens would be two groups. But it seems to me that we need, and the elders panel, and those advisory panels who are working for us, who are our advisory panels, I'm just wondering if we could, whether there's some...
Look, as a way forward, I was
Yeah.
going to, because I was surprised by the
Yeah.
cost of that.
I guess, sorry to interrupt.
No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I guess in terms of the free Wi-Fi around the city, we're always looking for opportunities to expand that. The Lawrenson Group and Wintec, for example, provide free Wi-Fi as well. The VOTR, if you like, we're looking at working with contractors there to see if we can put in some extend our Wi-Fi there. So we're constantly wanting to work with that third party to make it affordable.
And obviously, the system that I had in place would be like if you go to a cafe. So if we have visitors, we have a whole security system now downstairs, and then whoever they're meeting with, whether it be in a governance capacity or contractors or whatever, they would ask for the password, and I don't know whether that would be the password of the day or whatever it was.
Sure.
But,
And that's, if we could just pursue that, because
Yeah.
those people, okay.
but
So, Chair, what do you want to receive from this, that the report be received, but is there any action? Otherwise, it'll just sit on the table.
Yeah, no, it won't. I was going to propose that it be included in consideration for the 17-18 annual plan.
Okay, I'll be happy to
I think,
second that.
yeah, so, okay. Are there any other questions, Councillor Toomer?
Madam Chair.
That's moved by me, seconded by Councillor Corso.
When I look at Waikato District Council at Raglan, where the library is, you can hardly get near the library for all the surfies and these guys who are hanging around the library getting the free Wi-Fi. Would that mean that around our front door area and the customer service, you would have a heap of people sitting around there grabbing the free Wi-Fi.
Lots of surfies there.
Not probably, skateboarders probably,
Might be a Pokemon.
Yeah, so how far beyond the building would it extend?
So, Mr. Chair, Councillor, this will not be available through the normal public outside, so this will be our corporate guest Wi-Fi.
Yep.
It will be secured. It will be transmitting it through our windows, because we can't stop that, but it will be seen there, but it won't be accessible. The Hamilton Online is outside of a building, and that will be dealing with that same problem that you said that Raglan's got. They provided a single hotspot at the library, and it becomes a centre for attraction, where ours is spread across our CBD area, and so we don't have a centralised collation of people.
But for in the building, it would be, for safety reasons, and for that, you would have a password, and that might change once a week, once a, whatever,
That is correct.
every day.
We will
So
be
you-
securing it, making sure
Yeah.
that data security and cyber security is taken seriously.
Yes.
So it will be our own security that
Absolutely.
we'll manage.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
So just to be clear, no one can access unless they've got the password.
Yeah.
And we would control who got the password.
That is correct.
I mean, we can't stop a second party passing that on, but that's going to be minimal risk, I assume.
Yeah. So the same as we manage visitors now into the building,
Absolutely correct.
we would be, and we know who they are and how long they're here for, etc.
So with all due respect, don't we do that now then?
No, yeah, for visitors, I'm saying that under the same process, that we know who's coming into the building, where
Yeah.
they're going, who they're meeting with.
Yeah.
We would know who was requesting, access to the Wi-Fi or through the password.
So why is
I
there...
mean, password could change daily.
Yeah. So why is there any cost? Because we have Wi-Fi, which for some reason my phone hooks onto straight away, but other people can get on there with a password.
Different.
It's a different network.
So currently we've got different Wi-Fi access in the environment, the one for corporate networks, one that isolates for the councillor's environment, which is your access, internet access point. And then in this case, we'll be introducing a system that we can manage, secure and apply policies for our visitors, so we can revoke access and control who's got access to it.
And that's the one that's going to cost, whatever I saw this figure, 65,000 to start
That's
up,
correct.
set up, is it?
That is the
Is it?
estimate, yes.
Why does it cost that much?
Yeah.
It is around implementing a security of separating the corporate data environment, the councillor's environment, and then the guest wireless. So it's around the security design and managing that environment to separate our data.
Be cheaper to provide an open one, wouldn't it? Open Wi-Fi. Be cheaper to do that in the council building than it
So-
would be to have all the security checks.
Madam Councillor, so around the open Wi-Fi across our network, so when we look at the public Wi-Fi externally, as I mentioned, we are running it across the service providers' infrastructure. When we provide it inside, we will have to do it over our infrastructure network, and then that separation is what we need to create, and that is what costs, because it's quite different between the corporate and the external public site.
Smile and nod. I got you.
And that, coming to the annual plan, that report could also include, I've just had a chat with the GM around whether it is actually cost effective, given the amount of visitors that we have on an average, and all those kinds of things. Because it may not be that it may turn out that it's just not cost effective, that we have 7 visitors to the building a day on average, because we are collecting that data now of external visitors that may possibly use it. So that I don't know, but, okay?
Just one other point. With the copper, which is the, what do they call it? The new fibre, I mean. My package is unlimited for, thank God it is at the moment, because I've got one of the kids at home. I think it's only a 12-month period, isn't it, when you first get the new system in place? And then after that, of course, you'll actually be charged on the amount of usage of it, won't you? Is that the way the system works? Oh, okay, so it's various plans, okay.
So for our solution, we would not provide that limited bandwidth. We'll be doing it as part of our corporate solution in terms of the bandwidth, and the cost is more in the security and the management of the wireless access rather than in the internet connection.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
So that's been moved by myself, seconded by councillor Forsyth. I'm not going to debate on that. Look forward to the report. So all those in favour? Are there any against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Right, last item. Woo-hoo! Item 20, page 189, the action list. There are, two things that staff are requesting to be deferred, and the dates are there. One is the Zoo Strategic Review Master Plan, and the other is the Urban Design Advisory Panel. That was just an update, sort of, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, briefing to a new... Yeah. Are there any questions or any concerns on the action list from page 192?
Could councillor Lehman be released at the moment?
Yes. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
For your 3 years of
Where do I
looking
do
after us.
Sorry, yes, thank you. So where do I do the food, the mobile shops? Where can I, is that the right, have I lost that one?
So,
With the mobile shops?
kind of,
You want
yeah.
more of them?
No.
I'm
I'm just trying to, the reporting, you know,
Yeah.
because it's come up with Dr. Anna Casey Cox at the Community Forum, you know, and you know, I know it's in the system somewhere, I think.
I
But then
believe
we've
it's in
had
the system for
since
the...
when we've had further permits issued and.
Could be that's because we've got a current policy. But the last update the CE gave me was around that the recommendation for Community Forum was just to look at it. It wasn't specific onto a date or which committee. So he's put that on the list for the new council. So whatever governance structure they have,
I just want to capture it, and even if that advice is captured in these minutes, I just want to capture.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's our last meeting, and even if it's just picked up in the descriptive minutes.
Yeah.
That
So
the chair informed the meeting that.
Yes.
The CE had.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
So that's fine.
Just so we capture that. That's all.
So noting that the item from Community Forum, from the last meeting, the Community Forum Subcommittee relating to mobile shops. Be referred to, is going to be referred to the new council.
To the
right?
appropriate committee of council. To the appropriate committee of council.
And that was the advice from
the
the
appropriate
CE.
committee of council, that noted the advice that the item
Uh-huh.
would be referred to the appropriate council for an appropriate staff report.
I just wanted to say, so just on page 195, I don't have...
Sorry, it just came into my head. I thought I'd just capture it here.
Yes,
Yeah,
no, good. Look, most of the actions in this are to be completed, so that's great. I think the committee's done a good job. Just on page
As long as the
19...
committee secretary's got that, I'm fine.
Yes, she has.
Oh, good. Thank you.
On page 195 down the bottom, item number 54, look, I have to say, and I would like this noted in the minutes, that Councillor Noisy Mallet over there and myself and Councillor Pascoe were charged as a working group to review the standing orders.
Oh, yeah.
And Councillor Pascoe and I and Committee Secretary Brendan and, was it Emily or Deborah, sat in on, and I want this noted in the minutes, the worst LGNZ webinar that cost us $500 ever. Now, seriously, it was about 9 minutes long. It was very, very low level. And yet the standing orders, there are some fundamental changes that they are recommending in standing orders, one of them being that we can abstain. So we don't, and in my 9 years on council here, we haven't abstained. Now, we're not going to, I don't want to get into a big debate, but I just wanted that noted. We don't have to adopt everything in their standing orders, but I just wanted to say for the record that I think we need to formally write to LGNZ or somehow get it into the chain of command in the conversation how very, very poor that webinar was on something that are the orders and the rules for our governing body. It was seriously a 0 out of 10. It was mind-numbingly terrible. Don't write those words, but.
And it's also noted that you had an offer of another councillor and you said, no, he's been around far too long, so he
honestly,
graciously withdrew.
And there were some crazy suggestions in there. One of them was something like there were 3 different ways
that you could manage an item in the meeting, depending, and I hate to say it, on your political will, on the chair's political will, whether you went super formal, kind of formal, or really, really loose. It was just a diabolical mess.
I mean,
put those in the
A lot of their stuff is rubbish.
yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I think you and Mary and Jude and the democracy team, I think we've landed, I think it's cool, you know, and albeit the local government New Zealand can give us an idea, we're bound by the Act, and I think ultimately it's, dare I say it, it's the Speaker's rulings, it's the legislative authority of something like the Parliament as a guide. But it sounds as though what you're describing was a bit of amateur hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Sorry, Margaret.
Oh, no, just, she's looking down.
Sorry, Councillor Forsyth.
Stretching my arm.
Oh, well, yeah.
So while you brought up standing orders and reviewing them, have you managed to get, and I've spoken to Mary about this, have you managed to get the ability, our standing orders allowing councillors to Skype into a meeting? Because legally we can do it, but our standing orders haven't moved with the times.
I mean, that can be, like this action on here says this is expected to be completed by the end of 2016, and one of the first things that the new council has to do is adopt their standing orders. That's something they can simply put in the standing orders. It is a provision in there. We were kind of split. I can't remember. I don't think Councillor Mallet was at the webinar on that we talked about that point. But
that's not my understanding. That's incorrect. I mean, Mary's said before. I've tried to seek permission to Skype into a meeting, but our standing orders just don't allow.
No, that's what I said. We can't with our standing orders, but the new council, when they adopt their standing orders, could put that process in.
Okay.
It's allowed for in the legislation.
Yes.
We just haven't decided to run with
We'll
it.
have it, but we'll obviously have a debate. I think there's...
Yeah, absolutely.
With respect, there's lots of pluses and minuses in that, but
I guess what I'm just flagging too is that I don't think that Councillor Mallet, Pascoe and myself are going to have an opportunity to complete our work.
Shall I just give you an update of where we're not at? LGNZ was...
That's perfect.
Okay. They were supposed to be available for councils to look at from mid-August.
Yes.
So here we are on the 30th of August, and they're currently not available. When they come out, then obviously it will now be for the new council to have a look, and it would be something that democracy would have to work very closely with to get a flavour of what you want including and what you don't. But it's a decision definitely for the new council to be making.
Which is a little bit of a shame, because the working group was charged with looking at and, taking our 3 years of this term's experience and some of the feedback we've had on some of the challenges around standing orders and implementing them into proposed standing orders for this council, because we've experienced it. A new council coming in, there will definitely be, people new to the system and new to the process, and they may be flying a little blind on that. It takes a really long time to get to understand standing orders.
Yeah, well, look, I never understood that until I actually asked Mary. I thought that because the legislation said we could, that we automatically could do it. I just thought it was a capability thing, but it wasn't. It was around our standing orders.
The only comfort I guess I have is that Mary has been all over this, and the democracy team have captured the working group's feedback.
Yeah.
So, full steam ahead for the new council on that one.
So, Chair, just before you wrap up, and we've already acknowledged your chairmanship over this term, you might like to acknowledge your stoic 6 councillors.
Yeah, I reckon.
Well behaved, listening to every word we're all hanging on every word, and we've been sitting here just behaving like good little children.
And there was some garbage too, wasn't there?
We just need to move
Wasn't all
this
top
last
class.
item, but yes, I do want to thank you all, because you have stayed and hung on to my every word. It's just wonderful. 8:10, and we've only managed to just escape the extension.
And you realise that any one of us could have shut this meeting down.
Yes, well, Mr. Mallet, Gary Mallet tried to go.
That wasn't me, that was a call of nature.
All right, so
My kidneys are backed up now.
with that, I'll move that the action list item 20 be received.
Right.
Seconded. Deputy Mayor, all those in favour?
Aye.
Any against?
Contrary, no.
That's carried. Thank you.
Everyone.
I don't think I'll be going out to that.